Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me today on part two of Kabbalah versus Magic. And today's going to be very exciting, just like last week. We're gonna home in on a different part of this class. As I said, every class is its sort of own entity, own discussion within the greater idea of trying to understand what Kabbalah is, how to connect to Kabbalah, and what does it have to do with our daily lives. Last week, we primarily talked mostly about the essence of Kabbalah, meaning to say what it is, and we had some very good discussions of, that it's Torah, it's a part of the process, part of the oral Torah. And I don't want to go through that whole concept again, but it's not just another, magical kind of thing, a separate entity, a separate thing. And we had a very good class and elaborated on that and some other valuable points regarding that. Today, I want to go a little more into, first of all, break down some of the concepts regarding some of the different svarim, right? The different books that we have that are quote unquote Kabbalah books, right? Of course, the most famous one is the Zohar, right? But we're going to speak about a couple others. And then we'll talk about also how we to approach Kabbalah. Please, if you could please mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Right. The next thing we're going to talk about is just sort of giving that structure of the class. We're going to talk about also how to be a vessel to be able to learn Kabbalah. Right. So those sort of the 2 points that I want to talk about today. So we're going to start off like this. There's a very interesting Mishnah. The Mishnah in Chagiga, in Tractate Chagiga, says like this. It says that do not expand on Ma'aseh Bereishis, right, to 2 students, or on Ma'aseh Merkava, even to 1 student, unless he is a wise person who is able to intrude the concept on his own. So the point I want to bring out before we get into the other points is these 2 other Svarim books that the Talmud mentions. Actually, there is no mention in the Talmud about the Zohar. You know that. The Zohar is not mentioned in the Talmud. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Why? Right, I'm going to do a little quick history. Also, we didn't really do that, right? Last time, do a little quick history, right? But the Talmud does not speak about the Zohar. The Talmud speaks about something called Ma'aseh Bereishis, right? Sefer, as it's also known as called Sefer Yetzirah, right? The book of Yetzirah. What's the word Yetzirah mean? Let's start to create. Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, right? And then there's something called the Ma'aseh Merkava, right? Ma'aseh Merkava is actually from Yecheskel, right? Where Yecheskel speaks about his vision that he had, right, of the chariot of God and then the loftiness of God. We actually read it on the holiday of Sukkot, if I'm correct. I might be mistaken. Either Sukkot or Pesach. I don't remember which one. I think it's Sukkot. I have to look it up. Right? We read it. Right? We read the words. Right? But it is known as one of those deep Kabbalistic concepts. Right? Which sort of talks about the loftiness of God and the chariots of God and the angels and this cheer, and of course it's all metaphors, right, in the Kabbalistic concepts. But those are two teachings, right, that the Talmud speaks about, alludes to, right, that speaks about. Right? Ma'aseh Bereishis, the creation of Genesis, right, is known also as the book of Sefer Yetzirah. Now, Sefer Yetzirah, I did mention last time, right, tradition tells us that Avraham Avinu, Avram, our forefather, he's the one that authored Ma'aseh Bereishis. He's the one that authored it, right? And as I just mentioned, Ma'aseh Merkava, it's not its own book, but it's in Yecheskel, right? Yecheskel, right? He's the one that authored that. That was his vision that he had. So the Talmud tells us, right, that one should not expand. Right now, this is very important. This word, right? In the Talmud's language, it says "ein darshan," right? It's a Mishnah, so it's in Lashon HaKodesh. And "ein darshan," right? You always hear the word drasha, right? The rabbi is giving a drasha. right? The sermon in English, right? Darshan, right? He's a what's drush? It means to say going deeper into it, expanding, learning into it, right? That was one of the four things we spoke about. There's drash, right? Pardes, right? Was drash. That was one of the four things, going deeper into it. So a darshan wants to not expand. Of course, you could read the words, right? You could do the mikra, right? You could even do the getting to know a little more, but the expansion of it, right? The expansion of it, right? One has to be careful teaching his students, right, these things, right, if they're not wise person to be able to. So the second part we're going to get back to in a minute, right? But not in a minute, but a little later. But what we see over here is that besides the Zohar that we're all familiar with, right, and God forbid not to take away from the Zohar in any way, right, it is the foundation for us, right, in our generation and for the last 500 years. It is a foundation of those that are learning Kabbalah, right? The Zohar is the foundation, right? It was written by Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, right? And Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, as we all know, right, is what we celebrate his yahrzeit. We celebrate Lag BaOmer, right? And it's custom to go to his gravesite, right? Unfortunately, this past year there was that catastrophe that happened, right? But there's Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, right, was one of the students of Akiva, right? And he was lofty to no end, and he brought the Kabbalah just like Rebbe HaKadosh, right? Authored the Mishnah. He took the oral law, the component of the law and the Mikra, right? The law of the oral Torah, right? And he wrote it down. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai took the depth of the oral component of the Zohar, right? Which is all oral, and he wrote it down and he composed it as a Zohar. Right? If we have time, we'll expand a little bit more about that. Right? But for our purpose right now, as we know, the Zohar is everybody knows the Zohar. Right? My Rebbe, I remember my Rebbe in seventh grade. Right? My Rebbe in seventh grade, his name's Rabbi Fisher. Right? He retired already. Right? But actually, my brother now took over his class. Very cute, right? He taught him also, right? But my brother lives in Toronto, and he took over his class. I remember my Rabbi Fisher, right? One time was telling us, he said he had to go downtown in Toronto, right? He was buying a carpet, right? And a friend of his told him that this guy, downtown in Toronto, that has a little, storefront, and you could haggle with him, and he has good stuff. He has good stuff, but you can haggle with him and you can get a good price. Instead of going to these big department stores, whatever it is, you could go. So, okay, he goes down. You have to get a lot of carpet. He went down right to the store, and, it's literally like one of these, holes in the walls kind of thing, rugs everywhere, like one of these real classic, stores, right? This is going back probably about 30 years ago, 27, 30 years ago, right, approximately, right? And he goes and says, and they're talking to the guy, and the guy tells him, he says, you're Jewish, right? So he said, yeah, I'm gonna keep on my head. He had a little beer. Yeah, I'm Jewish, right? So he said, let me show you something. This brings me good luck. And he takes him to the back, right? And on, like he has it on a pedestal, right? He has the Zohar, right? He has the Zohar there. And he said, he has it all, clean and like a light shining on it. He said, this has brought me good luck. Right? To him, I said, this is holy. And he's right, it is holy, right? This is holy, right? And nothing's allowed to clean it all the time, right? And this is holy, and this has brought me good luck, right? You're a Jew, you know this, right? So we see the Zohar is known everywhere, right? The Zohar is something that's known. Even Hollywood knows about the Zohar, right? It's something that is known, right? We'll talk about the Jewish perspective, of course, of it, and show what happened. Why was there a period of time where the Zohar was not learned, right? But there's other svarim of Kabbalah, right? The Sefer Yetzirah, talking about the essence of Bereshis, right? Ma'aser Merkava, which talks about the essence of the wisdom of God. So I want to expand on this just a little bit, and the reason why I am is because I think it's very important, right? Because we nowadays, especially nowadays, and I've been affected by it too. So I don't know if you guys have, right? Because you guys are probably better than me, but I've been affected by this too, where we sort of everything's become commercialized. Everything's become, entertainment. Everything has become, just something easy. It's an experience, something to do, and it's I want to need better, or whatever it is. That's our society, right? And And that's something that sort of Kabbalah has also become that, right? There's Kabbalah centers. We spoke about that last week, right? Talking about the Kabbalah Center, right? There's this, Hollywood actors that have become, Kabbalah and into Zohar, and it's become like a fad, becomes like a thing. And what I want to show you is that Kabbalah, right? And God, I said, God forbid not to take away from the Zohar. We'll explain what the Zohar is and the depth of the Zohar, but the Zohar sort of become like the star of Kabbalah, which it is to a certain degree. As I said, it is a foundation for us, right? But there's other things of Kabbalah, right? There's other things of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is something much deeper than what we think. And I'll read you the Meiri. The Meiri is a commentary on the Talmud, right? He lived probably in the 1400s, late 1300s, 1400s. That's when the Meiri lived, right? And his works actually was lost for us for a little while, right? The Vatican had his. Like the Vatican has a lot of our books, right? And a little while ago, right, the Vatican allowed some rabbis, actually had a photographic memory, right? And they allowed him to come in, right? And to, read and find different svarim, right? And from now, we actually got a lot of new svarim, right? A lot of Rishonim that were lost to us, right? The Meiri is one of them. Tosfos Rabbeinu Peretz is another one, right? There's a couple of different rabbis who were lost to us over generation because of Inquisition things and that, and the Vatican, took away some, right? So the Meiri is one of those, right? He's mentioned in other rabbis. We knew about him because he was mentioned in the Torah and the Code of Jewish Law, and he's mentioned in other places, but a lot of his works were lost. And I want to read you what the Meiri says. He really brings out this point, right, of what these different learnings of Kabbalah is. And he says like this. Now I'm going to read you the English. Ma'aseh Bereishis includes the wisdom of the physical world, like astronomy, right? And other sort of physical, and gravity, and other physical, the laws of the physical world, right? That is what the Ma'aseh Bereishis is, the wisdom. And remember, last time we spoke about this, what it means, the wisdom, right? Wisdom is the inner workings, right? This is sort of the shell, right? The inner workings of astronomy and physics and everything else that's the wisdom, everything that's in our physical world, right? That's what Ma'aseh Bereishis is. While Ma'aseh Merkava, right, involves the phenomena, right, of the world that is beyond us, right? Like the world of the angels, right? And understanding God's existence and his unique oneness, right? The true understanding of the concept of Ma'aseh Merkava are above human comprehension. Even angels cannot understand the spiritual level of the world above them. But each one attains an excellent level of knowledge and understanding of God's existence in accordance with his own level, right? So this really works very nicely with sort of what we were talking about last time, that the concept of Kabbalah really is to get the wisdom, and the wisdom is behind the scenes of how these things work, right? And he's saying like this, and that's what the Mishnah is telling us, right? What the Mishnah is telling us is that Ma'aseh Merkava, right? Ma'aseh Bereishis is the physical world. Ma'aseh Merkava is the godliness. And then the Meiri adds in something very important. He says like this, he says, right, but each one attains the level of knowledge and understanding of God's existence in accordance with his own level. Means to say that one has to be on a specific level to be able to attain something, right? One has to be able to be on a level, right, to be able to understand it. And it's not something that's just gonna, I work hard. You have to be on a level. You have to work on oneself, right? One has to get a better, become more spiritual, right? One has to be an entity that could retain knowledge of spirituality. Knowledge of spirituality. One has to be attained like that. Well, we're going to talk about that idea soon. I just wanted to point that out. But I want to go back for a second, and I'm going to take questions in a second. All right. Let's stop for a second. Any questions or comments? Anybody? Nope.
Yeah, that's Michael. I have to tell you, I have an idea in the Merkava. I think the reason that you have to be so careful, when we learn that, is that part of that is a very strong. It gives it only in a very vague sense of physical attributes of Hashem. So you have to be very careful. And what the rabbi probably said, you have to be very careful when you learn that, or you shouldn't learn it, because you might get the wrong idea and give the Baruch Shalom some sort of physical product, which is absolutely inimical to everything that we especially to the Rambam, of course. But
excellent, Michael, you're 100% correct. That is exactly the point I'm trying to bring out to this point of we have to be careful what you learn, right? We in the Gemara Megillah. We had not too long ago in Daf Yomi, right? Those are learning Daf Yomi, or if you decide to go ahead and learn Megillah, right? The Gemara says at the end of the Megillah, the last one, it said the last parak, it talks about different Torah portions and the prophets that you read, right? And Targum, right? So we translate. So it used to be the custom that they had. People didn't know Lashon HaKodesh, right? People didn't know. Nowadays also we have Siddurim in English and things like that, right? But they had someone not only reading the Torah, but also translating it, that people should know what's going on, right? So it says, in Ma'aser Merkava, Nikroon ve'ein metargum. It can be read, but it cannot be translated, because the translation is too. You can't translate something like that, right? You can't literally translate the words, because then it's going to sound either ridiculous or it's going to sound like someone's just gonna like throw it away, because there are lofty concepts that you can't just do the little translation to it. You have to understand the depth behind it, right? And it's exactly also that's where you have to have the proper way of learning it. We're going to talk about hopefully soon, right? But you're right; these are lofty concepts, right? Ma'aser Bereshis, right, and Sefer Yitzira, right? These are things that actually are more. This is sort of a lower level within the framework of Kabbalah. It's a lower level, and that's something that's more attainable, right? More attainable to us, right? But Ma'aser Merkava is something that's, as you said, even angels can't fully comprehend it. Very good, Michael. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so the next thing I want to do is, and I should have done it last week, right? But we sort of got caught up, and it was a really fun class last week. And thank you all again. I had a great time, right? I want to just go through the history of the Zohar a little bit, right? Because it's fascinating, right? As we said, as I mentioned, there are many other, Svarim, and there's some that I don't even know of, right? And there's commentators that wrote, right, different things. And the Talmud is full of parables that are really Kabbalistic concepts. A lot of them are parables to understand the meaning behind the Talmud or things like that, but other of them are Kabbalistic concepts. There's a passage in the Talmud speaking about one of the rabbis. It's on angel, right? Bringing the different wonderful jewels, and he had a conversation with him. And I don't remember the whole details of the Mishnah. I have to look it up again. I think it's in Bava Basra, right? But there's mystical components going on there. The Talmud is packed with mystical ideas too, right? Halakha, everything's included in there, right? But the Zohar, as we mentioned, is our bread and butter, right? The Zohar is our bread and butter, right? You open up, if you reach the level, right, to open up different Kabbalah Svarim, right, you'll see the Zohar is quoted all the time, right? So what happened to the Zohar? And it's a fascinating thing. I just want to talk about it for a couple of minutes. So as I mentioned, right, Shimon Bar Yochai authored the Zohar, right? He didn't make it up. Shimon Bar Yochai, right, the famous story, was hiding from the Romans, and he was with his son, Rabbi Lezer, right? They were in a cave for 20 odd years or something like that. I have to look up the exact number again. And they were really removed from the physical world. God made a miracle, and a karba tree grew by the foot of the cave, and there was a stream that went by the foot of the cave, right? And they sustained themselves on that, right? And they reached levels of spirituality that one cannot even imagine. It says that when they came out, right, they had to go back in right away first, because they were burning up from their level of spirituality. Again, the Talmud tells us this, and this is a lesson in spirituality, if it was physical or not, right? But they reached levels where sort of they were able to, things were burning up around them because there's just spiritual beacons or spirituality, right? What does it mean exactly? It needs understanding. If it was literally burnt up, it would mean metaphorically, right? Or their energy of spirituality was so great that the physical world is sort of crumbling around them because they're on such high level of spirituality, right? Again, I don't want to get into that, right? But he went ahead and he felt that it was time to take the teaching of the Kabbalah, right? The oral component, as we elaborated on last week, the oral part of the Torah, which is Sod, right? Which we know as Kabbalah, right? Sod, the mystical component of the Torah, right? And he went and he authored the Zohar, right? He went ahead and he authored the Zohar. Now, Zohar is extremely complex. Right? I don't know if any of you ever opened up a Zohar. I opened it once or twice, right, to look at it. You could read it just like anything. I mean, it's in Aramaic, most of it, right? You could read it, but some of it makes sense, right? Some of it's complicated. Some of it sounds gibberish, right? That's the truth, right? Because he wrote it in a way, right, that you need to have someone to teach you. Right, you need to have someone to teach you. That's how he wrote it, right? And it was done on purpose. And again, because we're talking about mystical concepts, right? And he's trying to bring it out in a way that there's certain rules of certain words mean certain things, and certain phrases and certain parables, right? And there's a whole way of learning it, right? So he wrote that down. Now, exactly when we lost it, we're not sure exactly. We're not sure exactly. But it is known that by the time of the Talmud, right, for sure the Gaonim era, right, the Zohar was not talked about. The Zohar was not talked about in the Talmud, right? It's not mentioned anywhere in the Talmud, the Zohar. It speaks about Shem Vaychai, knowing the Torah and teaching it to students, right? And talking about Sod, as we mentioned, that's in the Talmud, right? But the Sefer Zohar is not mentioned. Now, it's not mentioned because it was taught to the few, and it was taught only to the few. It was a select group of students that were taught, right? So the Talmud felt that it wasn't necessary to talk about it because it was a secret society, sort of say, right? You had to be selected and to be worthy to be selected to this group, right? So,
but I have a question.
Michael, just give me 1 second. Let me just finish.
Okay.
I'll take your question. Okay. Right. So it's very likely that the Talmud doesn't speak about it because of that. So that's where we're not exactly sure when it sort of disappeared off the radar. Right. But it is known there are Nachmanides, right, who talks about Kabbalistic concepts, and he speaks about the Sefer Yetzirah, and he speaks about the Ma'aser Merkava and other things. Nachmanides in his Chumash primarily alludes to a lot. He says, but Derech Sod, uses that word. I'm going to explain this in the more depth in the Kabbalistic as we know it now, right? Called Derech Sod. He doesn't mention the Zohar, right? He doesn't mention the Zohar, right? We know that other Gaonim do not mention the Zohar when they start talking about their Kabbalistic concepts, right? So we know that it got lost somewhere around, right, the 400 era, somewhere around there, right? It sort of got lost. Right, but again, the concept of Sod, the concept of Kabbalah is still transmitted, right, from rabbi to students, group of people, and they still learn Sefer Yetzirah, and they still learn Ma'aser Merkava, and the Talmud. If you learn the Talmud properly, you could get the Kabbalah, the Sod out of it, right? And the teachings of the Zohar, right? Of course, those that learned it from their rabbis, they knew about it, right? But it was sort of the book itself sort of got lost, right? The Ariya Kadosh, right? The Ariya Kadosh, who is known as sort of the father of Kabbalah, right? Of our era, right? The last 500 years, right? Now the Ari was known to be. It's said that he said he was like the sniff, right, of the Kabbalah, of the neshama of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Now we're talking about concepts that are beyond my scope of knowledge, right? But whatever that means, right? It says that he found the Zohar, right? He found it. He was walking somewhere and he found it. There's different stories, and you know what? The story doesn't exactly make a difference how he found it. Really found the Kabbalah, right, the Sefer the Zohar, and with his other tremendous knowledge in the other parts of Kabbalah, he went ahead and he re-edited the Zohar because there was mistakes in there. He found different manuscripts and different things, right? And he went ahead and he edited it. And the Zohar that we have today is based off the editing of the Arizal, right? That's what it's based off. The correction, he made corrections, right? Because mistakes crept in there, different words, different things, right, have crept in there, and he corrected it based off his knowledge of Kabbalah, based off his tremendous lofty level of spirituality. It says that he was learning with angels and other things like that, right? So he went ahead and he corrected and he fixed the Zohar, right? And that really started the Kabbalah movement, sort of say, the real Kabbalah movement in Sfas, right? In the mid 1500s, right? That's really what, 1600, that's really when the Kabbalah movement started. The Radak was there, right? And the Chida and others. There's some other great Kabbalistic rabbis, not only the Zohar at that time, right? The author of the Lechadodi, right? He lived in that time. The author of the Lechadodi is based off mystical concepts, right? He authored the Lechadodi then, right? And that's sort of the breakdown. Then, right? Then the Hasidic movement also sort of expanded also on learning the Kabbalah. The Ashkenazic, movement, right? More learned it more in private, right? They still keep it more. There's plenty of Gedolim, Ashkenazic Gedolim that learn Zohar, but they won't say it. Right, it's sort of two different ways. The Sephardic also, they're Chacham, the Zohar, right, and Hasidim also more in that way, right. And the Ashkenazic sort of took the path of saying, no, this is it's been supposed to be more secret, more quiet, right, and they sort of keep it more quiet, right, and they don't really expand on it in their writing so much, and they don't use it so much in their explanations of the Chumash and things like that, because they felt that this is more for the select few, where others sort of take it in other ways. And that's sort of the breakdown of the movements, right, to our day, where you see Sephardic rabbis or Hasidic rabbis would expand more through the Zohar or other Kabbalistic concepts, whereas Ashkenazic rabbis not necessarily will, right? Doesn't mean to say they don't learn it. And that's sort of the breakdown, right? Just because we were talking about Sefer Yitzir and other things, the breakdown of how the journey of the Zohar went through the generations. Michael, you had a comment.
Last week, you said that the Kabbalah was brought down with the oral law.
Correct.
That's what you said. Now,
yes.
It goes against like Jewish ideas of including all the people. When the oral law was given to all the people, so why would the Kabbalah, be a secretive thing?
Okay, so excellent question. The oral law was given to all the people. The halachic component of the oral law. The oral law, as we explained, has different aspects. There's sod, right? There's pardes, right? There's pardes, and pardes is pshat, right? Drosh, right? A sod, right? And what was the other one? Pardes, right? And oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. Someone remind me. We got Remez. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Right. Remez. Okay. My brain froze there for a second. Right. So Remez. Right. So the pshat and the drash part of the oral law, right, was taught to everyone. It was taught to everyone. Right. The remez was taught to everybody. Had the options of learning remez. It was out there, right? But sod, right, was only given over to people that were worthy, right? Only given over to people that have expanded. And Michael, this will make more sense as we get to the next part. And I'll start that introduction. I just wanted to bring it a different way, but since you asked the question, right, you could only start learning Kabbalah, and as I finished off the words in the Meiri, right, only with his own level, according to his own level, right? Those words of the Meiri, right? Only according to his level. You cannot just go ahead and open up a Sefer Kabbalah. And when I went ahead and just opened up the Kabbalah, I just wanted to read the words. I wasn't expecting to understand anything. I just wanted to say, I read Zohar, right? No, not for that. I was just curious. I knew I wasn't probably, maybe I'll stand words here, words there, right? I've been to different, our Sephardi brothers, right, to have different things, and they say different passages of Kabbalah, of Zohar. I read the words. But reading the words doesn't mean to say that I understand what I'm saying, right? Or I get the depth behind the words that I'm saying. I might know the words, the shot of it, but I don't know the depth behind it, right? And therefore, since the Kabbalah, the sod, let's rephrase the word as sod, the sod component of the oral Torah has to be that one is holding on the level to be able to learn it, right? So therefore, one has to be worthy to be able to learn it. So that part, everybody has an option to learn it, right? But not everybody was taught it. Right, so you're right. The oral Torah was given, but it depends on what part of the oral Torah. Oral Torah is broken down into four parts: Pshat, right, Drash, Remez, right, and Sod, right. It was broken down into those four parts, right? So yes, not everybody was able to reach the level of being able to learn the Sod, so it wasn't transmitted to them. Right, but the pshat and the halacha, right, the things that everybody has to do, everybody has to be able to know, everybody has the ability to. That was given to everybody. Now, what they could acquire, good. What they can't, they have to learn more. Halacha, everybody has to know halacha. The drash, the midrashim, and all that. Everybody has to be able to try to acquire whatever they can. But the sod component, that can only be taught if you've accomplished the other things. Right, because that's, as we said, getting behind the scenes, and not everybody's worthy for that. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions or comments before we move to the next part? Okay, Mike has one.
Time periods of Ben Yochai.
Rav Shimon Bar Yochai lived. Thank you. Excellent question. When did Rav Shimon Bar Yochai live? That's what Mike is asking. Mike Herring, right? Rav Shimon Bar Yochai lived after the destruction of the Second Temple. He was Rabbi Akiva's student. Right? He was one of the 5 students of Akiva after his 24,000 students died. Right? So Akiva had 24,000 students that died. That's how we mourn during Sfira Sa'omer. Right? And then after that, he started with 5 students. We started with 5 students. One of them was Rav Shimon Bar Yochai.
It's a long time period between him and Yari.
Yeah, yes, for sure. He lived probably in the year 80, right? Something like that, 90. Right, maybe 100, probably not. Right, maybe the year 100. Right, and the Rizal lived in the 1500s, 1600s. Yeah. Okay. Any other question, comments? Okay. So now I want to take us back to a passage, sort of bring this idea back, and we're going to expand more about it. We just talked about it a little bit. We've been alluding to it, right? To the Mishnah that we spoke about last week. And last week I didn't have the exact Mishnah down. I found it, right? It's the story with walking into the parties, right? I mentioned that story in the Talmud, right? So the Talmud in Chagiga, right, which is actually right the next tractate on the cycle. We're now doing mode katan. Tractate Chagiga, right, tells us this story, right, that I mentioned last week, and it's Chagiga 14b, and it says like this. It says that 4 sages entered the orchard, right, the pardes. 4 great sages entered the pardes, right. They are Ben Azai, right. One was Ben Azai. Right, one was Ben Zoma, right, famous. Ben Zoma Omer, Lefum Tzar Agra, famous. Ben Zoma said, according to the toil of your work, that's what you're going to reap. Right, and other great statements from him. Right, Ve'echad Rav Akiva, one was Rav Akiva. That's we know Rav Akiva doesn't need any introduction. I think everybody knows Rav Akiva. Right, and so we have Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Rav Akiva, and Ben. 1 second, let's do one more. There have been Azai, Ben Zoma. The other is referred to who went, yeah. So, and the other one is called Acher, right? The other one's called Acher. We don't mention his name because we're going to see he left the fold, so we don't mention his name. And then Rav Akiva. So those are the 4. So the Talmud says like this: Ben Zoma, right? Ben Zoma gazed and died. Right? Ben Zoma gazed at the pardes and he died. Right? Ben Zoma gazed and went mad. Right? He went mad. He lost his seichel, as we call it. Right? And the other gazed and he left the fold. He became a heretic. Right? And Rav Akiva emerged completely. Right, the Rav Akiva went through and he emerged complete, right? And it says Yotze b'shalom. He came out with peace, but complete, right? Complete. So last week I brought this story down to talk about the concept of pardes. That's why I brought this down, the concept of pardes. But today I want to bring this story down for the real meaning of this story, right? The concept of paradise is not the meaning of the story. That was just showing you what it means by orchard, right? And what it means for the other things. But what's it really trying to tell us? Right? We see clear that the study of Kabbalah is not something to be undertaken lightly. We see this is clear. It's not, these are great rabbis, Ben Zoma, Ben Azai, Acher, you know who Acher is? Acher was Rameir's Rebbe, right? Rameir, right? The great Rameir. Rameir held himself a student of Acher. We're talking about lofty people, but when he walked in and he tried to understand everything, he got confused and he saw everything now in the heresy because he wasn't totally solid, right, on his level with all the other aspects of Torah, right? So we see that one should not be taken lightly. In order to approach this body of wisdom, a person must reach a certain level of perfection. If a person attempts to study Kabbalah without the necessary preparations, he may draw incorrect and even dangerous conclusions. It is not a joke to play with. You know, as a lot of times these magicians, or sometimes you see on American Got Talent or other shows, do not do this at home, right? This is not something for you to try by yourself, right? We've worked hours and hours perfecting this, dangerous act, whatever it may be, holding themselves up by their teeth from a rope 50 feet high. I don't know what, right? They're throwing darts at each other, right? Whatever it is, right? Whatever that may be. Right, but we say, okay, we won't do that at home, right? Kabbalah is not something that you should do at home, right? Kabbalah is not something that they're cool, yeah, let me learn a little Kabbalah, right? Let me check this out, right? Let me go to Kabbalah, right? Kabbalah is not something to take lightly, because as we see from the story, and we're going to explain why that is, right? But as we see from the story, Kabbalah is the wisdom behind the wisdom. So think about it, right? If you don't know the wisdom, how could you try to attempt to know the wisdom behind the wisdom? If you don't know the Torah, right? You're going to go and learn Kabbalah, but you don't know. Let's rephrase like this. You're going to go try to learn Ma'aseh Bereshis, right? The depth, Sefer Yetzirah, the creation of Bereshis, and the depth of the animals and the workings of the world, right? But you never learn Genesis. So you don't know that it says that God spoke the concept of Temamarim, that God spoke the world into existence. You don't know the idea that the whole concept of Adam naming all the animals, and what does that mean, right? You don't know those stories, and you know the stories of Abraham and Isaac. I'm talking about a low level now. I'm not saying you do know the stories, but you never learned the depth behind the stories. And Pshat, you never learned the commentaries on it. You never learned Rashi. You never learned Nachmanides. You never learned the Ben Ezra. You never learned, other the Orach Chaim, right? Other commentaries, or the Talmud that elaborates on these stories of the Talmud to give us a better understanding, a deeper depth of what it means. To be able to then go ahead and try to understand the depth behind it. There's a level, there's an order. So if you don't know it, of course something's going to happen to you, right? When you try to knock your head against the wall, right? Eventually you're gonna go insane, right? You're gonna go insane. Or if you dabble in let's say I walk into a science lab, right? I walk into a science lab, right? Let's say college lab, right? Not high school, even high school, right? I don't know what I'm doing, right? Okay, I in high school I knew all the different tables and whatever. I forgot it, right? I'll be honest, right? right? It's not something that interests me so much. I forgot it, right? So I walk in there. I said, okay, let's try this out, right? And I'd say, oh, this looks nice. It's blue, right? It's nice. It looks good, right? Oh my gosh, this is a little red, right? And let's mix it together and let's see what happens. All right? Come on. Anybody gonna let me do that? That makes sense? Should I even try to do that? I have to know what these different things are to try to mix it together. I have to know what happens. Right? Is it going to become foamy and it's cool and it's going to pop, or is it going to be an explosion and my hair is going to be on fire, or worse? I could get damaged. I could lose my eyesight if there's a vapor that goes up. God forbid, one could die from if they put the wrong chemicals together. If you don't know what you're doing, right? So then you can make terrible catastrophe. But if you know what you're doing, you can make beauty, right? You can make beautiful tricks and then cool and make science all fun and cool and great because you know what you're doing. Right? So if anybody tries and thinks, oh, I'm going to learn Kabbalah, right? Or, oh, look, all these people are learning Zohar and it's like the in thing to do. And I'm going to go to Kabbalah Center. I'm going to whatever. I'm going to read up on it. I'm going to wear a red string around my hand. Ooh, right? Okay. There's nothing dangerous about wearing a red string because nothing to it. Sorry. Right. But if you think you're going to do that, then you have no idea what you're doing with Kabbalah. So 90% of the people are not in danger, right? I'll be honest, right? Because they're not really doing so, right? They're getting conned, right? We spoke about that a little last time, right? So 90% of the people are not in danger, right? Because they're getting conned, right? So since they're getting conned, so I feel bad for them, but they're getting conned, so they're not in danger. Right? It's like someone says, "Oh, here's a science lab," and I walk in and it's full of candies. Right? Look, I'm not in danger. Maybe I'm in other kind of danger because it's full of candy. Right? But I'm not in danger. But one that really is going into really trying to learn the Kabbalah, right? You're in danger. You're totally in danger. Right? You need an approach. You need to know. You have to have a teacher. You have to know how to navigate it. You have to know what the understanding behind it. Okay, well, I'm going to finish with this. I'll finish and then I'll take questions and answers. And I want to finish with this Radak, right? The Radak says like this. I mentioned the Radak earlier. Radak was one of the great sages, Kabbalistic sages that lived, right, during the time of the Arizal, right, in Sfas, right? The Radak. He actually has a commentary also on Chumash, right, and other things. Right, and the Radak is talking about a verse in Tehillim, in Psalms, and the verse in Tehillim goes like this, right? Sod Hashem l're'eyav b'yisa lahodia. God's secrets is revealed to those who have awe of Him, and to them He makes known His knowledge. Right, makes known His knowledge. Says the Radak, right? Says like this: God will only reveal the secrets of the Torah to those people who fear Him. If a person is immersed in the purest of wisdom, but does not have awe of God, does not fully observe His commitments to God, will not reveal His secrets to Him. Right? That's what Dak says. Right? Now, what's the understanding behind this? What's the logic behind it? If so, it's just another knowledge, right? We don't find this that says, right, that the one who doesn't have fear of God, God would not allow him to understand, the laws of tefillah, right? We don't find it says the one who doesn't have fear of God, right? God will not allow him to understand, right, the ideas of the Exodus of Egypt, right, and understand the meanings behind the 10 plagues. We don't find that. Now, if one doesn't have fear of God, he's going to have a hard time understanding it because it is still Torah and it's still mystical, and that is true. He will have a harder time, right? I remember my Rabbi once said. Right, once told me that if someone is constantly doing things that are not correct, right, means to say not following the ways of the Torah. If that means to say from great transgressions to daily things. Now, there's not a righteous person in the world that someone that doesn't sin, but we all are trying to overcome that. But he says if one is living a life so then he's really fighting against himself all the time. He comes in the morning, he's trying to learn Torah, right? And in the evening or whatever it is in the afternoon, he's doing things that are not correct. He's not making blessings over his food. He's not keeping Shabbat. He's not dressing modestly. He's speaking Lashon Hara. He's cheating in his business, whatever you want, right? I just mentioned, all different styles of transgressions, right? Right. So he's constantly, he's sort of putting a blockage on his forehead, right? For understanding the Torah. Right? He's putting a blockage because you're immersing yourself in impurity. When you do a transgression, you're removing yourself away from spirituality. You're sort of putting a cover over your neshama, impurity over your neshama. So, of course, right, you're going to have a harder time understanding, right? But It doesn't mean to say you can't understand. You work hard and you work hard and you work hard. It doesn't mean to say you can't understand, right? In Sod, right? Sod Hashem, right? Again, you see the word Sod is, we use the word Kabbalah, right? But the word Sod is the biblical and the Talmudic way of talking about what Kabbalah is. And I like using that word better than Kabbalah, right? Just people don't know what Sod means, right? But the word Sod, right? Sod Hashem, the God's secrets, right? Which we now call Kabbalah, right? Is only revealed to those that have fear of God. What does that mean? First of all, two things. Number one, it's revealed. God gives you siyata d'shmaya. God, if you work hard on it and you're trying, God will go ahead and open up your brain to understand these concepts. Because God did not wire our brains to be able to understand these concepts. Because our brain is a physical concept. Brain is a physical thing, right? You can feel it, you can touch it. Yes, we can understand, or we're still trying to understand the synapses and this and that, and then the brain waves and all that. And that's not something that you can feel and touch, right? We can measure it and whatever, and we're figuring much more about it. We still don't know a fraction of it, but we're still figuring more. But it's still it's a materialistic. It's within the realm of the physical world. So it doesn't really have the ways of understanding mystical things. And we like science fiction and we like these concepts because it intrigues us. It sort of stimulates a part of the brain that we don't really use. But it's Kabbalah and things like this. So it's not an understanding. So when one has fear of God, when one proves to God that he's a loyal soldier, when one proves to God that he wants to get closer to him, not only by learning the pshat, not only by learning drash, and not only by learning, oh my gosh, I don't know why I keep on forgetting this one, right? Remez, thank you, Michael, right, Mike, right? I better work on my remez, right? Right, but not only on remez, right? One works on those and learning that, but not only that, but also one works on his character, right? One works on his actions. He's transforming his physical body into something more spiritual by making sure he puts on his tefillin, making sure they dress modestly, right? Making sure that they wear their kippah, making sure they eat what they're allowed to eat and not eat what they're not supposed to eat, making sure they make the blessings, making sure that, they speak properly, making, in all aspects of their lives, they're showing God that they want to connect to him more. God says, I see you're a vessel. Not only your learning, right, but also your actions. As a vessel that wants to get closer to me, I'm going to open up the door and allow you in to the inner workings. Now, there's steps. There's many different doors, right? Many, many different doors. There's many different levels. But it says God will reveal, right? Right? Well, that's what he says. Those are the words, and we have to be very careful with the words. Right? God will reveal it to him. Reveal means to say that I allow you in. Reveal is I'm moving the curtains apart. You could work as hard as you want, but the curtains are closed. You can't see in. You go, look, you can't see in, right? You can't see in because the curtains are closed. So God will reveal, God will open up the curtain, will let you in, because God says, I see you are a vessel that's ready to take the fourth step. Get the sod. Everybody else has access to everything else. Everybody. It's oral Torah. But to be allowed to learn sod, you have to be a vessel. Because as we see, even great vessels were damaged. That's on the highest level of Kabbalah, right, of sod, the Pardes level. Right, putting everything together and sort of seeing everything, right, all together, right, the highest level. But on a much lower level, you still have to be able to be a vessel to be able to understand it, because otherwise, you'll get damaged. If you try to learn it, you try to connect to it, you won't understand it correctly. Either you'll just lose your mind, it doesn't make any sense. The Talmud says one who tries to understand what happened before the world was created will go mad. And if you try to understand what will happen after the world it's going to be just after 6,000 years, whatever it is, will go mad. What does that mean? It's because we're not wired that way. We're not wired that way. It's dangerous to try to understand that unless you are someone that's wired and ready to take that step with a teacher, with someone to help you out, to be able to understand that. And that's really, I think, sort of this ends the second class, second part, and hopefully next week we'll go into more, Next week, I want to go into more how it's practical in our daily lives and show you many different examples where Kabbalah has influenced us in many different ways, even though we're not holding on, at least I'm not holding on that level of learning Kabbalah. We'll work on that next week, God willing, right? But I think this sort of ends these two parts together, right? Of realizing what Kabbalah is. Kabbalah is part of the oral Torah, right? It is a fourth level within the oral Torah, the Pardes, right? And that is Zohar is one of the many Svarim out there, right? That is the main one that we have, right? But is others out there also, right? And to learn Kabbalah, the danger of learning Kabbalah without being the right vessel is because you're trying to connect to something that you can't comprehend. It's like if you're a sci-fi addict like me, and I like sci-fi movies, right? I do. For those that have been in my classes, know I like Star Trek and other things like that, right? But so if you imagine you put on like an alien, headgear or something, right? Whatever, and you try to connect to it. It's like some alien, mind reading thing. I don't know, right? And you put it on your head, and your head will fry because you don't have the right wires for it. Right? You don't have the right wires. Your head will fry because you're not able to connect to the synapses of this cap or whatever, this thing that's on your head. It's an alien, it's made for an alien DNA or whatever it is. You'll die. You'll die. So too, Zohar, Kabbalah, Sod, to a certain degree, it's like an alien knowledge to our materialistic world. We have to transform ourselves, and then God will reveal. Thank you, everybody, for listening and joining us.